fingers into the man's ears. Then he spit and touched the man's tongue. He looked up to heaven and with a deep sigh said to him, Ephphatha, which means be open. It also means, could be extended to say, be open, be released. At this the man's ears were opened, his tongue was loosened, and he began to speak plainly. Jesus commanded them not to tell anyone, but the more he did so, the more they kept talking about it, and people were overwhelmed with amazement. He has done everything well, they said. He even makes the deaf hear and the mute speak. Again, Jesus is in a Gentile region. And there's something to be said here because if you remember, Jesus was getting some resistance from the people in his own homeland, not just really his own hometown. But he's gone around, he's ministered amongst the Jews. He keeps on going to these other areas, really trying to maybe get away from things to have some quiet time with his disciples, but no matter where he goes, the crowds are coming to him. And they bring the deaf man to him and he prays over him, and there's no explanation for why he stuck his fingers in his ears, other than this deaf man, he can't hear, he can't talk. So it's not like Jesus went, no. He just, he doesn't, and he's never heard, so he's probably not a good lip reader because he doesn't know what he's hearing. So to show him, and you know, I appreciate the fact that Jesus takes him away from the people so he can minister to them privately and not make a spectacle of him. And he gets him away privately, puts his fingers in his ears so the man feels the fact that Jesus is praying for ears. I don't know, there's really no significance of why he spit on his finger and touched his tongue, other than to believe for release. But in those moments, that man was healed of his deafness and his muteness, and he began to hear and to speak. And to speak clearly. And all of a sudden, everybody's amazed. It's definitely. You have to remember, he's not been doing miracles in the Gentile regions. He's been doing miracles in the Jewish regions. So now he's amongst these Gentiles, and all of a sudden they're believing. And there's a point in this passage where it says that Jesus looks up to heaven and he sighs.
I get that.
I don't know if that's the sound of a sigh, but it works for me. And he sighs. A sigh is kind of a, it's a groan. It means, if you look up the word in the Greek, it really speaks of groaning and just kind of a release of pain. And I really think what happened was Jesus is becoming aware of the need of the. Remember, he looked over the people of Israel and saw and had compassion on them, saw them like sheep without a shepherd. And all of a sudden, he's now not ministering amongst the Jews, but he's ministering amongst the Gentiles. And he's seeing the effect of sin upon people in a greater way. He's seen how bound up these people really are. Yes, his mission was to come for the Jew, and he came to die in this, but he came to die for everybody, to save all mankind. And yes, the time had not been released for the gospel to be preached totally to the Gentile people yet. But he was seeing the needs of the Gentiles. And there was a hunger there. And there was a hunger and a thirst for something spiritual. And there was a faith that was there in this Phoenician woman. And here was this other man, and he saw that somehow the effect of sin and evil in the world, what it had done to him. And as he's looking up to heaven praying for him, he just makes this release of pain, because I think it's just a sense of, look at the need. Oh, that we would see the need. So many people in our world hurt. So many people in our world suffer. I know Americans, we're so good to go to the doctor and get all the help we want. But you know what? People are hurting. They're hurting emotionally, they're hurting physically, they're hurting spiritually. There's such great need. And as he saw that need, he sighed. Yet he ministered to them. He healed them. Once again, he calls for them. Don't tell anybody. Again, he's not trying to draw his kingdom here on earth. It doesn't help the people just. So he goes on. Let's look at chapter 8. I'm going to tie this up quickly. During those days, another large crowd gathered. He still lived at Decapolis. Since they had nothing to eat, Jesus called the disciples to him and said, I have compassion for these people. They have already been with me 3 days and have nothing to eat. If I send them home hungry, they will collapse on the way, because some of them have come a long distance." His disciples answered, "But where in this remote place can anyone get enough bread to feed them?" "How many loaves do you have?" Jesus asked. "7," they replied. He told the crowd to sit down on the ground. When he had taken the 7 loaves and given thanks, he broke them and gave them to his disciples to set before the people, and they did so. They had a few small fish as well. He gave thanks for them also and told the disciples to distribute them. The people ate and were satisfied. Afterward, the disciples picked up 7 basketfuls of broken pieces that were left over. About 4,000 men were present, and having sent them away, he got into the boat with his disciples and went to the region of Dalmanutha. The Pharisees came and began to question Jesus. To test him, they asked for a sign from heaven. We're going to stop right there. This is not the feeding of the 5,000. This is the feeding of the 4,000. Okay? Differences. When he fed the 5,000, he was feeding the Jewish people. When he fed the 4,000, he was feeding the Gentiles. When he fed the 5,000, they had been with him for the day. When he fed the 4,000, they had been with him for 3 days. When he fed the 5,000, there were 5 loaves and 2 fish. 5 fish and 2 loaves. There are 7 that are feeding here. Okay? When they collected the baskets of the feeding of the 5,000, there were 12 baskets, and the word for basket was different than this word for basket. The other baskets would be like lunch-sized baskets. These were like hamper-sized baskets. In fact, it's the same word for basket that was used for the basket they put Paul in when they dropped him down over the side of the wall. So these were huge baskets, so they pulled up 7 basketfuls of leftovers. The interesting thing is, it's the same disciples as before, and when Jesus says to go get some food for them, they go, "Where are we going to get enough food to feed all these people?" Like, haven't you been here before? Do we have to go through this again? Bring me what you have. They should have been right there saying, "Jesus, this is all we have. You know you can do it. You know you're there." Isn't that how we as Christians live? God's done the miraculous. He's done it before. But we don't think He's going to do it again. We're not persistent. Sometimes we're not consistent either. There's an old Pentecostal song. "He'll do it again, my friend. Yes, He'll do it again. Just like He's done it before, He'll do it again. You may not know how or why. You may not know when. Just like He's done it before, He'll do it again." Started it too high to sing it. What He's done before, He can do again. Why do we question what God does? Why don't we believe for the miracles? His disciples, the ones who went out and did miracles themselves on His authority, here they are in the same situation, but they're not asking for it. I think that's a lesson to us, that sometimes we get so familiar with Christ, so familiar with God, so used to hearing about answers to prayers, that we forget to think that it is God answering the prayers. And we forget to ask Him when the next need comes up. Yet, He fed 4,000 men, plus women and children. And these were Gentiles. And they experienced the miracle-working power of God, just like the Jewish people have. So 3 examples where we see Jesus crossing over into the same region, the same area, but into the Gentile areas, regions, even out of His own country land. And still is performing miracles, still is ministering, and is becoming aware, because it's not that God is not aware of the need, but remember, Christ was fully God, fully man. He was in this position, He was in this place that He was experiencing this Gentile need in His fleshly body for the first time. Seeing their need, and I'm sure believing, going, I got to get to that cross. I got to fulfill the Father's plan. Look at the needs that people have.